This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 271, Networking is a Contact Sport, an interview with Joe Sweeney.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and today our guest is Joe Sweeney. He's the author of 3 books, most recently, Networking is a Contact Sport. Jones owned and operated a bunch of manufacturing companies up in Wisconsin. He's been in the sports marketing business for a long time, knows a lot of famous NFL players. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the principles of networking and advice that all sales babblers will appreciate. But before we do that, I'd like to get your advice and a take on something. A couple weeks ago, I was at my Fox Build Makerspace, and I did a pitch with something we call Entrepreneurs Anonymous, where you pitch an idea, and the idea that I have is something I call Habanero, and it is a business community app, and it was extremely well received. I was really surprised, and so it motivated me to start sharing the pitch deck with some other people, and it got me thinking, like, maybe I should start this as a business, and that's where you guys kind of come in. See, what the value of this thing is that it builds a set of communities for people where they can kind of get together, build a lot of trust and relationships, and they actually go through the mastermind process. I don't know if you know much about that, but that's a place where like-minded business people or like-minded people in the group can help each other, and they can hold each other accountable. And that has a lot of power. And if you're wondering why that is, well, let me tell you. About 5 years ago, I was taking a marketing course, and we were in a common Facebook group, and one of the people in there said, would anybody like to be in a mastermind? And I volunteered, and she cut us up in groups of 4 people, and I was with 4 different people. One guy was from Florida, one guy was in the UK, and the other guy was actually in Ecuador, although he's from Iowa. And we really hit it off, and I am still friends with those people. The guy in Ecuador actually moved to Thailand. That's how I ended up in Thailand with Denise when I moved to China. He lives in Kuwait now, but when he and his wife came over here, they stayed with us a couple times. All that from the mastermind. I was in like 2 other groups, and one of them was with Jennifer Snyder, and she brought up a good point the other day. When I was chatting with her, she goes, social media has broken our culture. People don't really have meaningful relationships anymore. I was in a leads group, a B2B leads group, about in January at the Chamber of Commerce, and there was a guy saying, I'm so glad this group is here because I have nobody to talk to, only my spouse, and they don't care. They're tired of hearing me that. It's pretty clear to me that people are lonely. People would like to talk to somebody about business, and there's no easy way of doing it, which is what the whole point of Habanero is. It's a business community. It's a business community app. It's kind of like Match, where it matches people up of like-minded interests, and it has a whole infrastructure in there for people to like get together virtually instead of having to drive someplace. And that's the idea. This is something I really wish I had back when I first started in sales. I had a lot of insecurities about the kind of selling I was doing. I felt like I could be more productive, but I didn't want my boss telling me to work harder. I didn't know how to go about this. I was thinking, I wonder if I could hire a health coach or something. I didn't know such a thing even existed back then. That's what this is all about. So I want to do a study. I've learned a long time ago not to build something without first doing some market research. So I've got a few questions that I would like to ask a few people to try to find out what their problems are, their challenges, the severity of their problems, any urgencies, concern, stuff like that, which is where you all come in. I wonder if you would help me out. I've created a website for it. It's called habanero.community. You can see it on the domain, and I'll make sure to have that in the show notes. It's just something quick and dirty, which is the whole point of what I'm trying to do. This is not about perfection. This is about trying to understand whether or not there really is a market for something like this. And if you could help me out, I would really appreciate it. If habanero.community sounds like something that would be useful for you, I have some questions I'd like to ask you about Habanero. They're not very many. If you could email me at pathelmers@salesbabble.com, that's all it will do. I'm going to send this out to everybody on my email list. I'll be promoting it probably on social media. I've got a whole box of business cards. I'm going to buy hand cards to people to see if I can get them signed. I want to get enough of these people. If I could get 50, that's statistically significant to give me a good sense of like whether this idea makes any sense. I would love to have you a part of it. I'd be more than happy to keep the Sales Babble listeners plugged into how this all goes. If you could help me, that'd be great. So, with no further ado, let's get to Joe Sweeney. And oh, by the way, if you think this is a bad idea, I really want to hear what you're thinking. Give it to me. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Welcome, Joe. You ready to babble?
Sure am. Thank you for having me here today, Patrick.
Okay, Joe, you are it says here you've owned, operated, and you've sold 4 manufacturing companies, and you've headed the Wisconsin Sports Authority. You're a sports guy, right?
Well, yeah, I'm the 9th boy in our family. I have 8 older brothers, so I think that's part of my family of origin, yes.
And you've been in and I know you've worked with a lot of high-end people, like Brett Favre, I see here on your resume here. But how is it that you got into the selling business?
Well, I think I've always been in the networking and selling business. I think I wrote a book about 9 years ago called Networking is a Contact Sport. And it's really about business development, Patrick, which I know that is really kind of the main thrust of you and your people and what you're trying to promote. But the whole idea of networking is I try to get people to reframe what networking is. It's really business development. And instead of the word networking, I really use the word connection. How do you connect deeper to people and individuals to help understand their needs? And what I say in the whole book is networking is really a place we go to give and serve and not get. That's if I had to describe the book in one sentence. And I think it worked because it's pretty counterintuitive of what most of us think. Most of us think we go out there and network and create business development for ourselves. And what I really say in the book is you don't sell anything. All we do in life, Patrick, is help other people get what they want. And if we can figure out how to do that, we'll have more sales than what we ever need.
It reminds me of the Zig Ziglar quote.
Which one is that? He's got a lot of good ones.
Yeah, he said something along that lines. If you can give people what they need, you can have anything you want.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's really true. In one of the books, I've written 3 books. In one of the books, I talk about a guy by the name of John Wooden, a coach at UCLA. One of his mantras was, you haven't lived a perfect day until you've done something for another person who can never repay you. And a lot of people say, well, how's that help with my sales? How's that help with my networking? How's that help grow my business? And if you follow my 3 books, that's kind of the theme through all 3 of my books. But the networking as a contact sport is really about how do we deepen the relationships with people and help serve their needs so we can sell as much as we want or as much as we have in inventory.
Now, I've attended a lot of networking events, Joe, and I'm just amazed at the number of people who do it so poorly.
Yeah, that's part of the reason I wrote the book, Patrick.
Because networking is a really great way of like meeting people, of kind of practicing your pitch or practicing your value proposition or just practicing, in my mind, the asking of great questions and listening.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. The whole idea of why people network poorly, a lot of people, Patrick, will ask me, what's the biggest flaw people make in networking? You know what it is? They think it's about them. They say, hey, Patrick, let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about my company. And after a while, you say, my God, this guy's not connecting with me because he never stops talking about himself. Versus you just said that if you could come in and ask really good questions, because I go through a networking process and it's really simple. It's not easy, but it's kind of like losing weight. Losing weight's really simple. You just exercise more and you eat less. But really the process of networking, and Patrick, you hit on 2 of them, is asking, listening, and then taking action, and then believing that when you serve others, it'll all come back. But just the 2 things, you ask and listen. I think you got to dig deeper into that, Patrick. You got to ask persistently, ask creatively. I think you've got to ask outside the box. I think it's critical that you ask with a mindset of giving. And most importantly, figure out how to make asking fun. Because if you can do that, you'll never work another day in your life. So the first step is asking, and then you hit the second one, Patrick, listening. Most of us, we don't listen. We're too busy talking about ourselves. And I love the old cliche, God gave you two ears and one mouth, use them in proportion. And the greatest networkers and connectors and salespeople know that. They realize that the more good questions you can ask, the better you get to connect with your prospect or client.
What's a good question versus a bad question?
What's a good question? Well, I'll tell you the three common questions we all use, and I think they're terrible. Patrick, how are you? Oh, I'm good. Patrick, are you busy? Oh, I'm so busy, Joe. Patrick, what's new? Not too much. I don't know a damn thing about you, Patrick. I think a good question would be this. After we break the ice, hey, Patrick, tell me what you're most excited about in your life. Then all of a sudden you say, oh, my gosh, Joe, my daughter has just made the AAU basketball team. We're traveling. But, boy, once I hear that, I can ask a dozen questions to penetrate and get you to get to know you better. But those three standard questions, we don't know anything about a person. And that's the three common questions we all use at networking events. And most of us, Patrick, the elephant in the room at networking events is most people don't want to go deep. Most people want to talk about, hey, Patrick, did you see my new BMW? I got the 5 Series. I was going to get the 7 Series. My point is all of this, we don't talk about the things that we really want in our lives and what's really important, because most of us operate on a surface level, and the whole ability, you hit on it, Patrick, of asking the good questions is really helping us to dig deeper into other people's lives to get to know them. And the more we know about them, the better we're able to serve them.
Some people think that'd be prying.
Go ahead, Patrick. I'm sorry, cut you off there.
Sure. Some people would think that's prying to ask those kinds of questions.
Well, that's a great question. Or another set of prying, creeping. Oh, God, this guy's a creeper. It all depends on your intent of networking and connecting with people. If you don't have a good intent, yeah, that is creepy. But if your intent is, I'm going to help you, Patrick, in both your personal and professional journey, I was going to say, I don't think you can creep enough. Because, again, the more you know about someone, the better you're able to help them, both personally and professionally. And in the spirit that networking is a contact sport, where networking is a place we go to give and serve, getting to know people and ask questions is part of the process. And if your mindset is in the right spot, I would disagree that it's not creeping. Some people might think it is, but again, it goes back to what your intent is of networking and connecting.
So when they answer, you listen. What's the right way to listen?
Well, I think it's what I say is, listen to your guts, listen to the marketplace, listen to the cadence of the situation. And when we ask good questions, sit back and listen. And I call that active listening. You're engaged. You've got good eye contact. Again, most people don't really listen because most people think, hey, Patrick, I know what's best for you. I know what to tell all your people about how to sell more. And we don't really listen. So it's asking good questions, sitting back, and becoming part of being an active listener.
I really like that. So the next thing was, after that, it was ask, listen, and then
take action. A lot of people, it's act is the third step. And a lot of people ask questions, they listen, but they don't follow up, they don't take action. And we don't take action, Patrick, because most of us find excuses. And I speak on this a lot. The best book that I've ever read on overcoming excuses is a book by a guy by the name of Wayne Dyer. And Wayne's written 42 books. He's one of my favorite guys. But in this book, Excuses Be Gone, he wrote the book and he sent out surveys, Patrick, and he had over 5,000 responses and reasons why people don't take action. And he charted the top 18. And what he says about all 18, not one of them are true. Excuses: we don't act, well, I'm too old, I'm too young, it will create family drama, I'm too busy to go out and effectively network. He said they're all BS. They're all excuses, and they're not true. Not one of those excuses are true. And when I speak, I list all 18, and I say, hey, I don't know about you, but I've experienced all 18 the last 12 months of my life. And then the last step is believing and receiving. And if you believe in the philosophy that I have, that networking and life are places we go to give and serve and not get, all of these things that we do for other people will come back several time fold. And again, we're not in that mindset, because what do we think in sales, Patrick? That it's a zero-sum game. The pie is limited. We better get ours, or someone else is going to take it from us. And again, one of the things I tried to portray is that we really live in an abundant universe. There's more than enough for all of us. And if we can tap into that life source and energy and network and connect with others, we'll get everything we want in life and more.
I really like that. I really like that. So I'm at a networking meeting, and I kind of walk through this. I know I've had some people on the podcast that have the notion of, like, it's really not the right place to sell, but it is the right place to just make an impression, and at a later time try to get them on the phone or schedule a meeting. Or, of course, some people are of the notion of, like, you should do it right there. Like, how do you fall when it comes to all this, Joe?
Well, first of all, if you go to an event to sell something, people can sniff that out. I always say that I wrote a New York Times bestselling book on networking, and I tell people I don't like networking. I don't like what it represents, because most of us, Patrick, think of networking of someone shows up at a cocktail party with his business cards and he's chasing you down all night. I would say at a networking event, it's a place to make connections. I don't think it's a time to sell. But again, there are exceptions to every rule. But I think that's where you get to know people, meet them. And I say this, a half joke, half serious. You never have a second chance to make a good first impression.
I totally agree with that.
How do you put yourself out there? How do you present yourself? And I think it's a time to connect. And that's, I think, by asking, listening, you can find out where people are. If you think afterwards they may have a need for your service or product, then follow up. But just don't follow up and say, hey, Patrick, do you want to buy my product? What I teach is that when you network and connect with someone, always try to find something personal about someone. And some people, you might say, oh, that's being stalking or a little creepy. No, I always say try to find out something personal. And when you follow up, I always say find something personal and then do something memorable. So, Patrick, let's say you met at the athletic club at a networking event, and through our conversation, I said, Patrick, what are you most excited about? And you say, Joe, geez, I've always been a fan of Egyptian art. I'm just making this up, Patrick. And I just got a whole collection of Egyptian art samples, and I'm really excited about that. When I'd follow up with you, Patrick, I wouldn't say, hey, would you buy my insurance services or whatever it is I'm selling? You can ask for that, but then say, P.S., by the way, I found a really cool Egyptian art piece. I mean, you can Google that, print it out for no money on your printer, and just insert it. And that would help make a connection, Patrick, between you and that, or me and you who likes Egyptian art. And I guarantee most people won't take the time to find something personal and then follow up with something memorable. And I know it's a little thing, but that's how you make meaningful impressions with people.
Joe, I see LinkedIn as a networking. One thing I'm amazed by LinkedIn is people don't know how to use it. People are confused about what's the right way to spend time on LinkedIn. They're confused on how to sell on it. And in my mind, I think it's the metaphor of the networking event is the same thing in LinkedIn, that you wouldn't do anything on LinkedIn that you wouldn't do in person if you were like shaking people's hands and exchanging business cards. Am I off base there, or is my metaphors?
No, in one of the books I wrote a chapter called Networking in a Facebook and Twitter World. And the basic conclusion is touch trumps technology every day. And the challenge, I think most, and I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but a lot of the younger people think opportunities in life will come through technology. I disagree. They come through people. And while social media can tee up and get information and begin a process, that's not where business is consummated. For example, Patrick, if I sold, let's say I had a business and I sold it, you were a financial wealth manager, and you and I were friends on Facebook or LinkedIn, I wouldn't invest with you if I made a couple $1 million because you and I are connected on LinkedIn. I want to see the whites of your eyes. If I'm going to entrust my family's wealth to you as a wealth manager, it's not because we're social media friends. I would really invest with you if you showed up at my kid's high school football game. You know why? Because then I know you really care about my family and me. And that's hard to develop electronically. And so while I think the LinkedIn and social media will change and has changed the way we sell and market forever, I don't think that's an all end all. I think it will help you to begin a process. But in the end, I say touch trumps technology every day.
Right.
And so it's not either or, it's kind of a little bit of both.
Why do you think networking is a contact sport? What do you mean by that?
Well, what do I mean by it? I think just what I said about seeing people, meeting them, touching them. I think that's where the greatest value is. And again, I think it's the elephant in the room. We talk about a lot of things in life, Patrick, but to me, the elephant in the room, and it has to do with selling and networking, is we pretend that a lot of things are important in our lives. But I think if you really, and I spend a lot of time with people on their deathbed, I do some work and when people transition, what they'll talk about are the relationships they built and those special moments in time that they've shared with them. I think everyone, and we don't talk about this at cocktail parties or at fraternity parties, all of us want this thing called connection. We want to connect deeper and better with ourselves. We want to do it with other people, and we want to do it with a power greater than ourselves. And so that's what this is really about. It's, we can talk about selling more and increasing our sales, but this is really about answering the fundamental human need we have, and it's hardwired into us. It's this thing called connection, but we don't talk about that. And the challenge I have with social media as a way of connection, as I said, it's a good way to start, but it's not an all end all. And I joke, I say, hey, when you meet face to face, it's easier to see eye to eye. And what I'm really saying is that's where you really connect with people. You don't do it through social media. Now, some people may disagree with me, but that's okay. I'm a people person.
I think it's just the start. I think it's the start. And I think that's what a lot of these people are trying to do. They're just trying to they're trying to get me on the phone so they can do something more personal, but they're so poorly at doing it. They immediately go into the pitch. You immediately make expectations of me as opposed to asking me about, what are you excited about these days? And I might say something.
That's why I developed a 17-piece networking online program, because I speak a lot, Patrick, and people will say, God, that was really good. Do you have more? I want to dig deeper. So with marketing company, Calfax out of Nashville, we developed a 17 segment networking program to do exactly what you just said, Patrick, to help people become better at this skill. We can call it networking, but I'd call it connection and business development, which leads to sales.
I like it. Joe, how can people find you online?
If you go to joesweeney.com, you can, again, Calfax out of Nashville did a really good job on our website. You can learn all about who I am, what our programs are. We offer a lot of free networking tools to help people begin a process. And again, if they want to dig deeper, then they can invest in a training program that we have. But if you go to joesweeney.com, you will find out just about everything you need to know about us, Patrick.
Awesome. Joe, thanks a lot for visiting us here on Sales Babble.
I'm delighted to be here, Patrick. I'm honored that you had me as your guest. Thanks so much.
To connect with Joe and to get access to his book, Networking is a Contact Sport, you can find that in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/271. And while you're there, if you could help me out on the Habanero Business Community app that I mentioned at the top of the show, I would really appreciate it. Any feedback that you can give me, I've only got a half a dozen questions. If you could help me out on that, guys and gals, I would so appreciate it. If you have any other questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can always find me at the salesbabble.com website and contact me, or you can send me an email at pathelmers@salesbabble.com. That's all I got today for you folks. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.